eteläafrikkalainen kovassa kulttimaineessa oleva elokuvantekijä ja antropologi Richard Stanley on tunnettu erityisesti 1990-luvun alussa ilmestyneistä Hardwareista ja Dust Devilistä, jossa Stanley esitteli oman tyylinsä, jossa kauhuun ja toimintaan sekoitetaan metafyysisiä ja okkultistisia teemoja, jotka esitetään hyvin visuaalisesti rikkaalla tavalla. Stanley on myös tehnyt useita dokumentteja, jotka kuten esimerkiksi Werner Herzogilla sivuavat paljon samaa temaattista aluetta kuin hänen fiktioelokuvansa. Dokumenteista mainittakoon natsiokkultisti Otto Rahnista kertova Secret Glory, Afganistanissa Mujahideen-joukkojen seassa filmattu Voice of the Moon sekä Haitin voodoo-rituaaleja kuvaava White Darkness.
Stanley oli Night Visions-festivaaleilla kunniavieraana, joka antoi myös Elitistille mahdollisuuden tavata herra ja jutella syntyjä syviä hänen kanssaan.
Night Visionsissa oli ensi kertaa Suomen valkokankailla nähtävissä myös David Gregorin ohjaama dokumentti Lost Soul, jossa käsitellään Stanleyn 20 vuotta sitten tapahtunutta katastrofaalista yritystä tehdä filmatisointi H.G. Wellsin tohtori Moreaun saaresta.
You said that in regards to the Lost Soul documentary that there are some things in it that you object to in regards, how they portray things or how they leave things too ambiguous. Is this still the case, or have they changed the film in any ways?
Well, they made some very slight changes in the DVD version, but only very small changes. And really, it's only because everyone in the documentary is lying just a little, in that they're all trying to protect their jobs, so each person is trying to pretend that they're more in control or have a better idea of what was going on than they really do, which is not human nature. Well, I guess my main problem was to do with Tim Zinnemann, the evil line producer from New Line, who was one of my chief enemies on the project, who was always saying that I was never available for different meetings. And I recall the amount of trouble I had getting rides to actually reach the meetings. I was often left marooned or I'd only find out afterwards that the meeting had taken place. People would be saying, "Where were you?" But no one would have notified me. At the time I was actually paranoid because I was thinking that I was deliberately not being told what was going on or that it was happening behind my back. So in the documentary, when Tim is saying that I'm isolating myself and not showing up for the different meetings, it reminds me of how mad I was at the time that no one was telling me these things were happening.
Like in hindsight, were these like the result of Machiavellian tactics, or were these just negligence on the part of production?
Possibly a combination of both. I imagine that the inability to understand that I couldn't just magically get from A to B, that if there's a meeting in 2 hours' time on the other side of the valley, that I can't just magically appear there, is probably just negligence. But at the same time, the fact that a lot of things I was never told about a lot of things, that a lot of messages never reached me, was possibly deliberate. Well, all the adaptations of Island of Dr Moreau generally stop short at about 2/3 of the way through the book, in that they always stop with the death of Dr Moreau. And I think this plays into a general tendency in American sci-fi fantasy movies to always put a democratic message into the story. It's very easy for them to see Moreau as a colonial tyrant who is overthrown. The beast people rise up against him. The big house is burned. That's the end. Usually, it's of each of the movies. Lost Soul, Island of Lost Souls. They sail away as the house burns, and it's kind of how the Don Taylor version ends as well. Whereas in the Wells book, obviously, when Moreau dies, that's really the beginning of the third act. That's for me when it becomes very interesting, is when they initially try and run the island democratically, and it fails horribly. The initial attempts by Mr. Montgomery to become one of the beast people and to have an egalitarian rule goes horribly, horribly wrong, and then it collapses into a dictatorship run by the hyena swine, by the apex predators. And then the castaway has to fight the hyena swine and eventually becomes the king of the beasts himself, basically takes on Moreau's role. So by the end of it, the character who is initially appalled by Moreau's methods discovers that he is using the same methods himself to maintain order on the island, which is a much more cynical view of the whole process. The kind of American version is you simply destroy the tyrant, liberate the beast people, and everything is fine. Whereas in the Wellesian version, nothing really changes. To some extent, it's a critique of colonialism and really an attack on the values of the empire. So, but America, I guess, hasn't had an imperial period. America still thinks that they can go out and conquer the world and bring democratic values to the outside world, and that this will make everything better, rather than suspecting that it will make no difference at all. Another problem I find is that no one has ever treated the beast people like they were animals. They always treat the beast people like they're monsters, which are kind of creatures that go raging around through the undergrowth. But really, if you give animals the power of speech, it opens up all kinds of possibilities. So the potential is huge, I think, for humanized animals. I mean, we can see from the success of the raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy where this could go. But I don't think anyone has actually developed the beast people properly to the point where we can feel sympathy for the individual creatures. I mean, in the treatment, in the script, I tried to bring an element of shamanism to the story. I saw the castaway's journey as being kind of also a shamanic journey into the world of the animals, like when you descend into the realm of the nature spirits. So I imagined, the guardian of the law being this goat man who was dressing up like Moreau. I liked the idea that the animals would dress as humans, just like human shamans would dress as animals, and flipping that over.
Well, I heard that you were gonna do like a Jodorowsky type of thing of actually creating a comic or a graphic novel of your Moreau. Is this true?
Yeah, it's written. I did write a draft of it. But Moreau is complicated because I'd only just finished writing the draft when CBS Television announced that they were doing a TV show based on it. So now, thanks to the appearance of David Gregory's Lost Soul documentary, there is a battle between CBS and the humanoids and the guys who did Dawn of the Planet of the Apes also want to do Moreau. So suddenly there is several corporate powers who all want to try and control the island again. Hardware is an interesting place at the moment because we've found that finally, after 25 years, that there may be a tiny little legal loophole whereby we might be able to regain control over the rights of the movie again, which is the first time that we've gotten this close to basically getting back into the hardware world again. So it's got to the point where we're designing the droids. So already there's sketches and plans for how the Mark 13s will look, and we'll be able to call them Mark 13s, which is nice because for years I thought we would never be able to use this brand again or to call it hardware. I've been legally locked out of it ever since the movie was made. Well, actually since before the movie was made, because I had to sign away the rights even before we shot the film. So finally, fingers crossed, it may be possible to return to the hardware universe in the next year or so. They found that 25 years on, the rights might actually have devolved back into a place where we can get access to it. And in which case, the long aborted hardware sequel script, which has been sitting on the shelf for 25 years, might actually end up becoming a TV show, which is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, but also TV is in a pretty different place now than it was maybe 10 years ago, because there's much more explicit content.
Yeah, it would be better that way, because indeed, television now is much more adult than movies. For some reason, you can't have nudity at all in movies. I don't know why this is, that sex and nudity has vanished out of American cinema. I haven't seen like pubic hair in an American film for a really, really long time.
Fucking shoot it!
I've been looking at some of your films, one sort of visual thing that I've noticed from them is that in many of them there is POV shots that are used where the POV shot is somehow distorted or somehow represents the character, that the character is somehow other than completely human. That you have in Hardware, in Dust Devil, and I think in Mother of Toads you also have this sort of distorted POV shots.
Yeah, Toad Vision in Mother of Toads, that was almost a joke because of the hopping Toad Vision is very silly. But I'm fascinated by the fact that different creatures see in different ways. And I would love in Island of Dr Moreau to have had animal vision. But animals see in a very, very different way from us. I mean, for instance, a lot of animals have tracking devices embedded in their vision, so that they can find their way to. They know which way is north or which way to migrate. I mean, it may well even be that a bird or some creatures can see direction like in the form of color. That they may be able to see it gets brighter if they're navigating in the right direction, or darker if they're going in the wrong direction. I'm absolutely fascinated by the way that different creatures, may be able to see smells. Very fond of, I think the movie that inspired me on this was Michael Wadley's film Wolfen. I think Wolfen has the best creature vision I've seen in any movie. Wolfen was also the first time I saw Steadicam used to such a fluid degree. I think for me Wolfen was one of the few POV movies where I actually felt the creature was more powerful or was more perceptive than humans, which sort of takes a step back when you go to Terminator and Predator, where I feel like the creature is seeing less well than the people. It's so pixelated in Predator that it looks like it's not seeing as well. I think Michael Wadley probably was ripped off by everyone, in that I see elements of Wolfen all over James Cameron's work and stuff, with the James Horner score, the POVs, and for a film that nobody really saw when it came out, and which failed so badly that the director never worked again. It's surprising how many people have imitated that movie or been inspired by it.
Yeah, I think one of the very few sort of POV style of effects before Wolfen was 1 year before. It was the film Night of the Demon, which is this terrible Bigfoot splatter film.
I never saw that.
Where Bigfoot rips a man's penis off. And it has Bigfoot POV in it, and it has those distorted edges around it.
Yeah, there's a bit in Wolfen where the camera kind of zooms low over the ground and kind of sniffs the ground, and we see the impression of footprints and car tracks and things, which I really like. It's giving us a sense of what the animal might be seeing. So I'd love to have done that in Island of Dr Moreau, but there was no chance. One wants a sense of heightened vision or of things seeing right through walls. If we go back to the hardware world, this is something I'd like to get into, because the droids should theoretically be able to see through solid objects. As they're perceiving motion and heat rather than light, they should be able to see through the wall, or be able to see the current, the power in the actual building, in the walls, and the actual people moving in the different rooms. So I like the idea that the droid can see you right through the wall, and also would be able to zap you without actually entering the room. So this is something that I'd love to see in get a sequel or something which was more properly developed.
Did you also have yourself this kind of experience? Because I think when you were in Afghanistan, I seem to remember that the story was something like you were in a minefield and you took LSD and you had this kind of like experience of actually perceiving where the mines are. Could you tell us this story?
Yeah, well, I imagine that was a hallucination, but it's complicated. But in Afghanistan, I did get into a lot of trouble at one point when everyone I was with was killed or injured. I was the only one left standing or still capable of walking. There was one other guy with me, a Mohorn, who was German, who had lost the use of his legs. And also in that point in time in Afghanistan, the Russians had seeded the country from the air with these things called butterfly mines, which were little green plastic things like literally butterflies, because they had two green plastic wings, a little detonator in the middle, and they dropped hundreds of thousands of them out of aircraft over the country. So they were just all over the place, in stupid places, in branches of trees, and cracks in rocks, and they were just strong enough to blow your leg off, because the idea was to slow people down, to create casualties, to slow the resistance down and demoralize them. They wouldn't necessarily kill you, but would cripple you. And these butterfly mines could have been practically anywhere. We had to get out of the situation, and because I thought I was going to get killed, I started eating all the LSD that I had in the medical kit. We had taken a sheet of LSD with us in the event of making it to Shambhala or Shangri-La or some kind of place where it would have been cool to do the LSD, but instead we ended up in the battlefield. Thinking I was going to get killed, I started taking as much of it as I could, which then changed my attitude a lot. I then realized that I became very calm, the situation became very beautiful, and it seemed fairly easy to see what to do, and I managed to tie Imo onto a donkey. I got him back to the front line, and then I managed to get hold of a donkey that I got him onto and set off. But I had this crazy perception that I was able to see where the landmines were and know to go around them. Now I suspect that was probably a hallucination. I can't imagine that was real.
You can't hunt a nachtloper like an ordinary criminal. He is of the spirit. We were put here just for his use. We're nothing to him. We're dust in the wind. His world is older than ours. He's been here since the first times. He and his kin walking in our shadow.
Well, there's this often quoted Dust Devil review where it said that the style of the film is like Tarkovsky on acid. So does that kind of description please you, that your style is thought of as Tarkovsky on acid? Because I think it's quite a contradictory idea of Tarkovsky was very sort of puritanical, sort of strict person. Doing acid is quite a wild idea in my view.
Yeah, no, Tark would have hated my work. I recall that Tarkovsky in his diary writes about going to see Andrei Tarkovsky's Possession at one point. Spends about 2 pages in his diary saying what a dreadful, terrible fucking movie it is, and how it exemplifies everything that's wrong with American cinema, which is crazy because it's nothing like an American movie. But he's just so appalled by the level of violence and horror that he's completely revolted. So
and he also went to see in Italy. He went to see Fulci's Zombie Flesh Eaters.
Oh no. I can't imagine Tarkovsky watching Zombie Flesh Eaters. This is just beyond my imagination. It's from a different world. But he had obviously little idea of what American cinema was really about. Because Zalewski is certainly nothing like American cinema. But when I first encountered Tarkovsky, I was literally tripping. It was I remember it was the middle of the night, and I was in the middle of some kind of crazy drug trip in Brixton in South London, and there was a television program on about shamanism. I switched the TV on at some point and to try and watch this show, which really wasn't any good. I remember not being interested in the documentary, and then changing channels, I accidentally ran into Mirror, which was playing on a different channel. And in the middle of the drug trip, Mirror connected with me extremely profoundly. Tark wouldn't have liked this, but coming at it straight, as I tried to watch his movies before when I wasn't on drugs, and they'd been too slow and too difficult to get into. But that accidental encounter with Mirror while I was tripping was deeply profound. I found myself crying and sort of get riveted by the material. And afterwards I went back and watched all of his films and became an avid fan. There was a period when we tried to adapt Flicker by Theodore Roszak into a film. And it was unfortunately just before Island of Dr Moreau. So the Moreau situation derailed any attempt to adapt it. But there was a treatment. It was a treatment that I wrote with Jane Giles, the former programmer of the Scala Cinema in London, at the behest of Edward R. Pressman at the Edward R. Pressman Film Corporation. And it was probably about a 30-page treatment, which was pretty faithful to the Roszak book. I mean, what we all wanted to do was to create the clips. Well, I'd love to have shot the missing reel of Orson Welles' Heart of Darkness, for instance, which just to recreate what one imagines the Welles' Heart of Darkness might have been like, and the various pieces of the films described in the Roszak novel are very tantalizing. And then after Moreau, when I was removed from Moreau, I lost track of the Flicker project. And weirdly, what happened to it after that was Ed Pressman then gave our treatment to Terrence Malick, who had it for a while. There was a period of time where it was on Terrence Malick's desk. And then Terrence Malick didn't do anything with it. And it moved from Terrence Malick to Darren Aronofsky. And Darren Aronofsky then hired the writing team from Fight Club to turn it into a screenplay. And they managed to expend a huge amount of money on developing it. Multiple years later, after Moreau, the Aronofsky script came back into my possession again in a very roundabout way. A director friend of mine, Nacho Cerda, was offered it after Aronofsky bailed on it. And Nacho said, "Well, what's this piece of shit? You read it." And threw me the script. And I finally got to read what had happened. It had been going around Hollywood for about 10 years at that point, being developed, and it was really pretty bad. It was much too long. It was close to about 200 pages, and it had gotten extremely fat. And again, they'd very much misinterpreted the cathars. One of the problems with the Theodore Roszak novel is that it relies on the unfortunate cathars, the medieval heretics, as being the ultimate source of the problem, or the bad guys in the story, and the cathars are pacifists. So having bad guys who are pacifists is a problem for Hollywood, in that cathars are always reinvented as Satanists, or made into are reinvented in the image of the way that the Inquisition viewed them, as opposed to the way that they really were or are in real life. So yeah, I was not very impressed with the Aronofsky script.
But I think there's a little bit sort of like Da Vinci Code type of stuff in there, so I get like as well in Flicker.
Yeah, well, it's a lot more intelligent than the Da Vinci Code, and you can see that there's some elements of Flicker that Dan Brown stole, just outright, notably the albino. The albino bad guy first turns up as the albino Cathar film director, and Simon Dunkel in Flicker, so I can see that Dan Brown was taking some ideas from it. But again, no one's really prepared to deal with the actual theology or ideology behind it. It's much easier just to make the bad guys into bad guys, rather than trying to get into why the Cathars would be making movies to begin with.
Yeah, I think for a director, you can imagine that, creating all those clips from those, imaginary films that are included in the novel would be really sort of like very mouth-watering idea.
Yeah, it was very tantalizing. I mean, I'm sure it would probably be a disastrous film because I think it's a film which is more attractive to filmmakers than to the audience. Because it's exciting for us to recreate the style of Orson Welles or to recreate a Monogram or Republic B movie from the 1930s. It's a lot of fun to shoot, but I'm not sure that around that time was the Tim Burton movie Ed Wood, which came out just before Moreau as well, which I thought was Tim Burton's best movie. But at the same time, when it first came out, unfortunately, it was a box office disaster. It didn't open well, which again indicates that unfortunately the audience don't like movies about movies.
In the videos that we do for the site, some videos ago we reviewed Argento's Dracula 3D. Have you seen the film in question?
Yeah, no, it's very unfortunate. I still love Dario. And for me, Dario is like grandfather in the Texas Chainsaw family. He was once the fiercest and finest of us. But even though he still understands what he's doing, if you put a dagger in his hand or like a hammer in Grandpa's hand, he still remembers the motions. But the strength and ferocity has gone from his blows. He's no longer the killer he once was. And Dracula 3D doesn't obviously function on any level at all. It's on costume design, the Claudio Simonetti soundtrack, the performances, the script. It feels like everyone is having a bad day the whole way through, which unfortunately has been the case with all of Il Maestro's work for the last 10 years or so. I haven't really seen any signs of hope for a long, long time.
I don't know. For me, I think like Phantom of the Opera is just dull rubbish, and I think Dracula was enjoyable rubbish, at least in some weird way for me.
Phantom of the Opera was the first one I really couldn't find anything good about. That's when I kind of stopped talking to Dario more or less because I no longer knew what to say. And I think that's also when he started up this thing about funny dwarves, which is one of his worst characteristics, of putting short people into movies and thinking it's funny. Like the witness hence the Claudio Simonetti comedy dwarf theme from Nonno Sano from Sleepless and things.
Ja Richard Stanley jatkaa kohti uusia elokuvallisia, taiteellisia ja esoteerisia seikkailujaan. Tulevista projekteista mainittakoon pian ilmestyvä kirja, jossa Stanley kertoo, kuinka itse Dario Argento vihki hänet okkultismiin.